Welcome to Vertical Rocket Talks, our first installment in this video and podcast series where we interview our friends, our colleagues, and clients about exciting topics and cool stuff. My name is Dan, and I'm an innovation lead here in Vertical Strategy. And today I'm joined by my colleague Jacob, a data scientist and all-around cool guy. We're going to talk a bit about the applications of machine learning and how to get started with that. So welcome, Jacob.
Thank you very much. I've been looking forward to this talk. I think it's a great opportunity to share some of our thoughts. And I'm very happy to be here. So let's get started.
Great, Jacob. Thanks a lot. So Jacob, machine learning, what's it all about?
So to me, machine learning is about automating some of these processes and opportunities that we haven't been able to exploit so far. So think of automation in the manufacturing or production industry. We have been automating all the tasks that we could automate by, writing algorithms, rhythms, and rules to predict stuff. But also we've tried to standardize sort of the rest, all the things that include decision making.
Yeah.
And I think machine learning is sort of the next toolbox that we can use to expand upon that and automate some of these more hard to reach decisions. And this includes also, the use of unstructured data such as imaging, audio, you name it.
Okay, so it's kind of like the next level or next frontier of automation and that whole journey companies have been through.
Exactly.
Cool. So if I'm a company, what kind of, what's in it for me? What do I get out of my investment when I start to do machine learning and work with that?
So I think there's two sides to that. One is sort of the short-term investment and that really depends on how good an opportunity you have. I think that's something that can vary a lot. But I think in terms of the long-term strategic goals of your company, I think this is one of the things that can take you to a new level, such as automating some of these tasks where you're replacing a lot of your experts' time with automation, and then you can use your experts for some different, more complex tasks. So I think this is something that can really benefit companies long term.
Okay, so it's both. Automation so far has been very much about the simple tasks and all, the manual kind of low value adding tasks, but you're also talking about replacing experts and high value tasks as well.
That is what I'm getting at. I believe that to a certain extent, traditional automation has been about automating manual processes.
Yes,
and I think
all the boring stuff.
All the boring stuff, and you can still do that with machine learning. I also believe there are applications there, but what takes it to a new level, I believe, is that you can actually use it in more complex decision making.
Very cool.
And one of the interesting things is that you need the experts, you need the subject matter experts to get to that point, and you need the experts to monitor it. But you're gonna free up some time for the experts to use their time better and come up with better solutions.
Okay, very cool. So now I guess we're talking a lot about efficiency gains and cost outs, kind of where automation have traditionally played a role, but is there also a role for better customer experiences and new experiences for the customer in applying machine learning?
I think there is, and I think it's something that is one of the reasons that you should transform now. Yeah. And that is that we are, as a customer, we're expecting more and more, and we're expecting to have a very personalized experience. And I think this is at the core of many machine learning algorithms, is that they can adapt to your specific solutions, which will give you something that is more focused towards or targeted towards your customer experience, but also something that can adapt over time. I think that's at the very core of machine learning. Why it's something that you should get started at is that it can adapt. So it's not something that you write it up and then it's set in stone. It's something that is very easy to adapt over time to learn to behave exactly, and also adapt. Maybe you come up with a new product or you come up with a new business opportunity you want to pursue, and then you can actually transfer all the knowledge you have learned in models. So I think. On the long scale, a long road ahead of you, I think, machine learning is something that can take you to the next level and then keep on going.
That's very cool. But I guess also kind of Spotify has been one of the hallmark examples of using machine learning for personalization and individualization and things like that, right? So I think that's also a good example of something that's continuously learning on my behavior and making a better customer experience.
Yes, and I think so. That's an interesting example you have there. So that's an example where you're building a completely new type of product by recommending very personalized experiences and a lot of new points there. But actually, I wanted to come up with a case that is quite similar but very different in nature, and that is a case we did with OneMed, a pharmaceutical supplier, which has one of its core businesses involving wound care. And the challenge there is for nurses to classify wounds as infected or inflamed.
Yes.
And the issue is that, the patients are overtreated with antibiotics, which is...
when the nurses get it wrong, I guess?
Yes, so when the nurses misdiagnose, they tend to overtreat with antibiotics to be sort of on the safe side, right?
Of course.
And of course, this is something we want to avoid, so that we don't, contribute to antibiotic resistance.
Yes.
Also, it actually also increases the healing potential for the patients and the prognosis by providing the correct treatment if they can correctly diagnose. And what we did with OneMed was actually take their wound care program and transform it to a whole new scalable level. So they would have nurses, chat with wound care experts about specific cases, sending images on their phone to these nurses.
Something so they took an image of the wound and sent that to
basically just took an image of the wound, send it to a nurse, and they would get back, send it to a wound care expert.
Yes.
That would then, return some response, some suggestions for how to treat and whether or not it was infected.
And it seems hopelessly
inefficient. Super valuable for the nurse. Super hard to scale.
Yes.
So what we did, we built this machine learning model, which uses image recognition to actually classify these wounds into infection and inflamed. And we also built a platform to collect this data in order to, not only make the model more efficient at classification, but also to teach the nurses about the subtle differences in wound care,
cool.
And actually
to make them even better at their jobs as well.
Their job, and have a direct way of getting in contact with the wound care experts to get that second opinion when it's needed.
Very cool.
And provide all these tools that you expect nowadays. You need guidance on how to treat, some tutorial videos,
so
all these.
Embedded in a digital experience.
Exactly.
Almost. Yeah. Okay. Very cool.
And you have it right in your pocket when you're out in home care centers and in hospitals.
But that's an amazing example of those two sides you talked about, right? Freeing up time from the wound care experts and creating efficiency in that whole process, but also creating a much better experience for the nurse, but ultimately for the patient with the wound, ultimately ensuring that they don't get antibiotics when they don't need to. That's an incredible example of kind of covering the whole thing.
I think it's incredible, and I think it's something that also shows you that you can actually come with nothing but a great idea and actually get started.
Okay.
So when we started out with OneMed, they had 7 cases. In terms of data, I get this question a lot: how much data do I need to get started? And the answer is often that I give is often, well, how much can you afford? Okay. And I say that is mostly the case. You want as much data as you can afford.
Yes.
But that's not to say.
Talking because you hear the examples of Google and millions of images to train how a cat looks like.
And if you can afford it, you're gonna get a better product, no doubt about it.
Okay. Yes.
What you can do though is that you can piggyback on other people's solutions. So, for instance, Google and other companies are actually training models to do these tasks that are more or less similar: image recognition task, speech recognition task. So you can sort of use pre-trained models and then fine-tune it to your specific needs.
So coming back to OneMed, I don't know, Google does a lot of things, but I'm guessing they haven't done image recognition of infected wounds.
No, they haven't.
So how did you piggyback on something there, and how much did you use to get started on that project?
We use pre-trained models as a starting point, and then we fine-tuned it to our needs. And I would say, even though you don't need millions of photos to fine-tune, you still do need some photos. And as I said, we started off with 7 cases.
Yes.
But we had a very clear idea of what we wanted. We wanted a way of classifying these wounds into inflammation and infection, and we had a clear idea that image recognition would be a way to do this going forward. And that being said, there is a golden standard called convolutional neural networks.
Okay.
A lot of different options there, but basically that is the way to go. So we went for that, and we built a platform to start collecting the data we needed in a format that was applicable to this specific task.
Okay.
And I think that's sort of the main take-home message here, is that if you don't have what is needed to get started in terms of data, you can easily get an estimate of how much you need by building a solid platform to collect the data that you need, test it out in small scale, build a proof of concept, and then get going right. Before you build that whole glorified solution and then find out that, okay, maybe this is not going to work.
So what I'm hearing you saying is actually that, I don't know, I think a lot of people, including myself, for a long time thought that, although the technology of machine learning is maturing, it's only those few cases where you have a huge data set, like Spotify, billions of listens, that you can apply something like machine learning. But what you're saying is actually you started with 7. As long as you know what you're looking for, and maybe you're willing to piggyback on other people's work, or maybe acquire some images, pay for them, then you can get started actually with a much smaller data set to begin with. Is that right?
You're not going to get going with 7 cases, and
No.
we didn't either. But we knew that okay, these were the kind of images that we're going to start collecting, and we mapped out the flow that the nurses were going through when they were doing that diagnosis, and found out, okay, so the visual aspect of that is an essential part. So we're going to test that out, and then we collected, but with as few as a few hundred images, we were actually getting started and getting results.
But that's manageable.
And that is something that is manageable to most, I think.
Okay. So how fast did you get to kind of something that you could use?
So that was in 6 weeks.
6 weeks?
I think technically maybe 8 weeks. It was over Christmas at the time, but it's something that you can actually quite rapidly test out.
So let's say, so a few hundred images, 6-8 weeks sounds pretty manageable. But if I'm a company out there, I think this is interesting. How do I get started? Where do I spot the opportunities to apply machine learning to some of my processes or some of my applications? How do I do that?
So I think, what you need to do is you need to find out where is there opportunities that, have some interesting business value, high business value, but also something where it requires a lot of expert knowledge to get going.
Okay.
So, if you have experts that make decisions on specific tasks, for instance, the OneMed wound care experts were, diagnosing these infected and inflamed wounds, really hard to do for a non-expert, if not impossible. But these experts, they can do it in a matter of minutes, right? Or even seconds.
Okay.
So these tasks that are, expert required or have a requirement of an expert knowledge to access, but have huge business value. So this is the core of the wound care business, right?
Yes.
That was an interesting opportunity because it is something that you cannot automate just by putting it down in simple rules, right? You couldn't just tell the nurse, look, if the wound has this color here and this here, like it's more complex. It's something that's not easy to write down in instructions, right?
Okay, so you're looking at an opportunity or a problem. There's a big optimization potential, but it's too complex just to set up a rule set and let a robot do it.
Yes.
Or make a guideline. I'm thinking anything that has to do purchasing or optimizing allocations and things like that, I would imagine has a big potential there.
Yeah, we actually did something like that with a company in supply chain, working on optimizing production allocation. So these are the things that where when it doesn't have to be images or audio or these unstructured data. It could also just be that you have so many things to take into account as an expert that even with all your 20 years of experience, there are so many factors you need to take into account.
Okay.
Right? So think of just in supply chain in a manufacturing company. You have to take into account all the incoming purchases, the outgoing sales, back orders, quality assessment, fluctuations in markets and strategic decisions coming from down top, right?
Yeah.
So just as such a simple task as prioritizing production is something that has been optimized extensively in most companies.
Yes.
But what I think that a lot of companies don't realize is that even though you have all these things rigorously set up, there are still things that are quite intransparent, right? It's very hard for, say, the portfolio manager to know in precise numbers, how much is this decision going to cost me, and how is it going to affect all the other things.
The system is too complex to
see
the implications.
Complex to see the implications, right? So that's also something where you can use machine learning to predict these kind of effects, and also prioritize something like production allocation.
And I would imagine that even smaller improvements there could go and have a quite significant impact.
Definitely
across the system.
Yeah. So in this case, we had sort of an interesting case where supply was very limited, and this made you had sort of two major factors going into the production allocation, and that was of course you wanted to maximize your profit, right? But yes. Then you had sort of balance that with the strategic decision, but also your production capacity, right? And if you turn out that if we were running at maximum capacity and just producing producing everything coming in, we could maybe optimize a little bit, but when we were limited in capacity, we could actually see a significant change in revenue potential. So and these things are not always evident even to subject matter experts. So
Okay, very cool. So Jacob, sounds like a lot of cool applications, but why is it now? Why is now the time to look towards machine learning and start to get engaged with that if you're not already as a company?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned that you need to think of the future when you're talking machine learning.
Yes.
You need to think, how am I going to transform my company? Because if you're not thinking in those terms, you're already sort of setting then you're already saying that you don't need machine learning, you don't need to change. And we can just see that companies don't have the same life expectancy as they did 60 years ago, and this applies to both small companies, but especially also larger corporates.
Okay.
And one of the things that machine learning, why machine learning now is that we have the technology, the algorithms have matured to a stage where you can readily apply machine learning. It's very accessible, and it's becoming cheaper and cheaper for all the computational costs and storage and all that.
Yes.
A lot more data is becoming available, both for purchase and open source.
Yes.
And you're beginning to see a lot more use cases. So inspiration for new business opportunities are popping up everywhere.
Yeah.
And finally, I would say, there's a lot of talent out there. And if you're going to transform your company and attract that talent, you need to make it interesting. And I think machine learning and AI, I think if that's not something that's attracting talent, I don't know what is. So
it sounds like we're in the perfect storm. Technology is ready, cost is going down dramatically, data is available, talent is available. It's time to strike. It
is, and investors are going at it now.
Yes.
Now, funding in ML and AI is skyrocketing these years.
Yeah.
So if they believe in it, I do as well.
Yes, well, I do as well. Consider me convinced. So thanks a lot, Jacob. So if I'm not mistaken, you published a short report or perspective on this, right?
Yeah, so we're really interested in looking into more of these industrial use cases. So this could be manufacturing, but could also be retail. But basically just picking our brains and looking at where do we see the most exciting opportunities. And we spotted, 4 major opportunities, and we built a deck around that with a lot of cool cases.
Cool.
Everything from quality assurance to customer lifecycle, and it's really exciting, and you should check it out.
Very cool. And if you're interested in more about that, you can download the report either on our website, we're publishing it today, and it will also link somewhere if you're watching the video version. So thanks again for joining us in the first installment of our Rocket Talks video and podcast series. If you have any feedback, don't hesitate to share it, both in terms of ideas for future guests or anything about the format. We'd love to get your feedback. We hope that you will join us again in the next episode. Have a nice day. Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you.